Crystal Charter, Daughter of the Red Seal. Read and written by Rebecca Sewell. Chapter 17. Edic had been waiting with the inn's carriage outside the flower shop. Eyes fixed on the door of the shop, he masked his bewilderment well when they stepped out from the vine-hidden alley beside it. The three of them set off for the guild without a change of clothes. Mouse pulled out the rumpled peacock blue jacket from his bag and put it on over his dishevelled shirt. Considering their appearance, Maebe had a feeling that wearing his jacket was the only thing that would convince the guards to let them in. Long bridges connected the city into spire-like islands closest to the shore. Stringy food caught between the teeth of a predator. The rock formations erupted from the ocean, buildings shining bright above the water, safe from the harshest of waves. Atop a cliff at the edge of the city was a huge temple, long ago converted into the home of the Artificer Guild. Pale stone and spiralling towers around a domed roof. Ahelor's stony-faced assistant appeared at the bottom of the steps to the main entrance. The giant dome above them was glowing orange as it caught the last light of the setting sun. Has it only been one day? Maebe thought to herself. Only yesterday they had been hiking through the woods and laughing about Ahelor. Now he seemed anything but a joke. They followed the young-looking witch up the steps, and steps, and steps. Their breath became strained before they neared the top. Maebe noticed the young artificer leading them had a hand that was a marvellous contraption of brass gears and cogs, moving as though it were real. At the back of his mechanical hand sat a large green gem, polished and shaped into a smooth oval. She wondered if he had lost the hand naturally, or sacrificed it for a magical improvement. "Hardly befitting your father's name to arrive a full day late, and filthy," Ahelor's gravelly voice groused from the entrance just above them. Ahelor's own appearance would be comical, if it wasn't for his position as a wizard. Flocculent hair poked out from the brim of a domed hat that matched a guild building, topped with many lenses for his glasses. Each circle of brass was filled with a thin slice of crystal, and they constantly flicked over his eyes in a stochastic rhythm. The folds of his rusty robes were wrapped with a wide belt, bedecked with 3 large blue crystals. Mouse didn't answer the wizard until both he and Maebe had finished ascending the stairs. His hand held out for Maebe to stand beside him. "Hardly befitting the protector of the city in my father's kingdom to allow warlocks and beasts into your borders, is it?" Mouse growled in return at the wizard. The old man laughed, throwing a great sleeve around Mouse's shoulders and guiding him into the dark wooden doors. Huge decorative brass hinges spread over the wooden panels. Maebe was amazed that such doors could open by themselves, for witch or human. "I like you. You don't dance around the topic like the rest of your siblings, eh? The warlocks, we heard about them. Crew of artificer protectors left around noon using the aerial scout to see if we could find them. City guards have been scouring the hills since as well," he informed Mouse, back turned to Maebe. "Well, we didn't see them, and we came from the warlock camp this morning." Maebe scowled at the back of his crinkled robe. "Well, they were probably in the wrong place then. We're engineers, not psychics." Ahelor faced Maebe, tone derisive. "Lots of mountains border this city. Don't worry. They'll have found the remains of the camp by now. You took a long time getting here." The wizard's face made a small grin through his grey beard. "I'll send a flitter to the captain now so the half-prince can see for himself that they've located it. I might let you know too. Wouldn't want the merchant's daughter feeling left out." He stamped his heavy staff into the ground 3 times, the sound booming through the high arched hall. A huge owl with the same whirls of cogs as his assistant's hand, flew down from the high ceiling above them and landed on the twisted branch atop his staff. Ahilor placed an ancient hand on its head, murmuring a message. "Can you touch the crystal here? Picture where you saw the camp," Ahilor asked. Mouse didn't move, maintaining a cautious manner to the wizard who just caught his anger off guard. Maebe stepped forward, glaring at the wizard, and touched the crystal. The oversized brass creature flared its wings and shrieked in her face before taking flight into the fading dusklight. Maebe jumped backwards with shock, tripping over and nearly falling. "That's my boy, Hooticus!" Ahilor hooted after the owl. "Is that a flitter?" Mouse asked with sincere curiosity, not acknowledging Maebe's furious glare behind him. "That he is. Fastest one we created. Does more than carry messages, that one. He's as good as an assistant, has real intuition." Ahilor beamed after his creation. "Well, let's not dawdle. We'll go to my office. You can tell me all you learned." He strode forward, waiting for Mouse to keep up, leaving Maebe to lurk along behind them. "I think we can leave your father's message for today," Ahilor said. "Maybe you can come give it once you've bathed, before you ask me to make weapons for the military, eh? Did he give you an era crystal like the others too?" Again, he slapped his hand on Mouse's shoulder, and Mouse frowned at the old wizard. "He didn't give me a crystal, no. Let's go to your office, shall we?" Mouse shuffled out of his wrinkly grasp and gestured for the old wizard to lead. Mouse had been given a shard, a fragment of the full strength of a crystal, a testament to the king's faith in his bastard son. How old must Ahilor be to look so ancient? Maebe thought to herself. She hadn't heard of anyone still living who had seen the witch wars, but Ahilor must have seen the immediate aftermath. They were ushered along high corridors, built of pale stone with large glass cabinets displaying inventions from the Artificers Guild, some made centuries ago, each with a small plaque detailing who made it and the function of the item. It made her father's own collection look pathetic in its gloomy dark office. Artificer-made inventions were mostly powered by crystals, but not always. They prided themselves on innovation and had worked alongside humans who wished to study since before the charter restrictions. Witches from other countries joined the Artificer Guild when they realised their strongest power was in crystal charging. But those who lacked the mind of an engineer and didn't want to charge crystals for humans were often given work in the crystal mines. Magic always sounded more magnificent in the stories of history, but in reality, the largest feats required the witch guilds to work together. Whilst an uneasy truce remained between each country to allow guild applicants to pass freely, proclamations of superiority over other types of magic and fears of another war caused most guilds to remain isolated from each other. New arrivals often penalised in no small measure for wishing to visit their homes after passing their tests. Only dream witches and hedge witches roamed free, and all guilds contributed to the warlocks, but none more so than hedge witches. Ahilor's office was close to the laboratories used by the researchers who worked there. Maebe remembered the layout of a building from a dusty book hidden in the depths of the garden library. Strolling behind Mouse and Ahilor, she saw many busy artificers hurrying around corridors, holding huge stacks of scrolls, crystals, and bizarre glassware, bubbling with fluid inside. She peeked inside some of the rooms as they passed, but nothing made much sense to her. Piles of crystals, smells of burning, tired-looking witches writing meticulous notes or observing other crystals, plants, grinding metal cogs or flames. Not as exciting as she expected. Artificers claimed to have the most rewarding work of all the guilds. From the public display of the guild work, she assumed the laboratories would be livelier, full of cheering celebration at a new discovery, not worn-out worker bees hunched over desks. Ahilor and Mouse pulled ahead as she slowed, intent on observing the witches at work. The last thing she saw was a witch with a crystal affixed to its head behind his ear, lying on a table dressed in nothing but his underclothes. A pigeon with a tiny crystal-like crown sat on the witch's stomach, cooing softly but not moving. Another witch, in a mist-grey robe and a pointed hat, was monitoring them with a clipboard and a quill, giving monotonous instructions. Raise your right leg. Drop it. No reaction. Raise your left leg. Drop it. No reaction. Try moving the bird 1 inch to the left. Raise your right leg. The door clicked shut in front of Maebe's nose, and she turned to see Ahilor, staff raised, crystal aglow inside it. His face looked severe, but he flashed an unconvincing grin. Best leave 'em to it, eh? He hurried off back down the corridor, leaving Maebe no choice but to follow, and gave Mouse an apologetic glance. Ahilor's office was a mass of wonky-looking bookcases, surrounding a huge desk made from rich gnarled wood with a nook in one side, where he rested his staff. The two items together seemed to belong as one piece. The rest of the room had tables laid out, with pieces of brasswork or piles of paper resting upon it. But whether it was Ahilor's own work or the resident witches, Maebe did not know. It was bright due to the white walls and several large open windows letting in a small sea breeze. Several more perches were scattered throughout the room, with various mechanical birds, non-active, and some in various stages of dismantlement. Please, have a seat, Ahilor said to Mouse. Mouse collapsed into the plush green velvet made from the same gnarled wood as most of the room. Begin by telling me all you can. We need to know as much about these intruders to our lands, and since you're the only witness, I want to make sure we miss nothing out. He sat in his own chair of smooth, twisted wood across the desk from them. Maebe eyed the room, realizing there was nowhere for her to sit. One chair? She raised an eyebrow. I requested a meeting with Prince Morsalus, Miss Sumine. If you are determined to remain, I can fetch you a stool, he offered. Have I done something to offend you, Wizard Ahilor? She asked, scowling at him. She had always wanted to meet the wizard in person. She had seen him at a distance, and her father had dealt with him before. But he left the guild witches to make orders from the Red Seal fleet. She hadn't expected him to dismiss her so easily. In my position, girl, I spend a lot of time judging crystals for their worth. Not all reds are weak if they're clear and large of size. Not all purples are strong if they're cracked or tainted. So on and so on. His hand circled by his head before he looked back at Maebe. From that, I learned a lot about judging people for their worth too. Since you're choosing to remain, I will say this once to prevent further interruption. You cannot do anything to help in this situation. You have no sway with royalty. You have no power in Clest. You have no information on the warlocks that I could not get from the prince. Who was invited? He rose from his chair, staring up into Maebe's eyes, voice rising in anger. You are currently supposed to be doing your job by ordering magic supplies for the next year's Red Seal deliveries. A position completely unsuitable for humans. Yet the king in his wisdom gifted the privilege to your family. And yet here you are, in my office. You have abandoned your work so easily. And in the face of warlocks stealing people from my city, you are more concerned with visiting your nature witch friends who bother me with useless nonsense most weeks. You pry into the work of my subordinates and question where you can sit on a meeting you are not welcome to. All of this informs me that you are self-absorbed to the point of being blind. Now sit down and remain quiet, or I will have you removed from the building." His hand hovered over his staff, and a small footstool slid from the base of a large bookcase to slam into her ankle. Against every outraged impulse, she perched delicately on the uncomfortable wooden block and refused to rub the bruise that had been left. When she looked across the desk, she saw she was sitting so low, only her forehead would be visible to Ahelor on the other side. The shame burned her. Mouse and Maebe sat in silence on the carriage ride back. Her anger was a writhing, living creature crawling under her skin, fueled by the fact she could smell the exertion of the past few days rising off her. She was disgusted with herself, how she had presented herself, dressed in torn, filthy rags, how she had allowed Ahelor to speak to her like that. And worst of all, deep down, how she thought he might have been right. Maebe sat in furious silence for the entire conversation with Ahelor in his office, grunting in response to the few questions the wizard dared direct at her. Only after Mouse said she would clarify on some of the details. Ahelor pulled a huge tome from one of his bookcases that swayed with the adjustment to its weight. After making her check a dozen times, he finally conceded to believing Maebe had remembered the correct constellation of the warlock flags. "Doesn't really matter what faction of warlocks used the portal to get here. To use a portal you need potions from witches trained by the Night Guild anyway. The only difference it makes is that it's more accurate to keeping notes on," Ahelor added, after she had pointed to the sign. "The king believes all of the portals were destroyed," Mouse declared. A few mistruths here and there. You know, politics. You can't just destroy a portal, boy. At least not without summoning the kind of trouble that we don't want to deal with," Ahelor replied. "Nonsense," he glared at the wizard. "Some portals were destroyed before my time, and there are barely any left in this country. The few we know of are warded to counteract anyone arriving. And since no one's trained in the Night Guild residing in Green Kingdom, there seemed little point in guarding it from this side." The old man sucked his teeth and looked all too casual, considering he admitted to lying to the king. "Explains the jumbo. They must have sent it through first, test if it was being watched." "I didn't know that only night witches could use portals," Mouse muttered to himself. "No, anyone can use a portal, but night witches make the potions that allow the physical body to survive the trip. Activate a portal without drinking a correctly made potion, and if you arrive on the other side, you'll be missing parts at best. Completely inside out at worst," he informed Mouse, making the prince cringe. Hooticus had also returned after an hour, gliding in through a large open window high above them, shrieking in mechanical tones as he landed. He dropped a crystal onto his creator's lap, and Ahelor informed them that the Artificer Protectors had located the camp and escorted the city guard there. They were currently searching for information around the abandoned site and returning any bodies to be buried. It seemed that the missing songgoat herders that had inspired the songgoat committee were reduced to charred bones in the warlock's fires. Mouse clenched his fist tight when he heard the news. When they finally left, it was only because Mouse informed Ahelor in firm tones, his confidence having grown from spending time around the wizard, and tiredness overcoming his remaining nerves. She was certain the wizard would have kept them there all night, asking them whatever random question popped into his brain. Mouse had shoved himself to his feet as he spoke, and held his hand out for Maebe once more. "Night fell hours ago. If you would excuse us, we would like to return to our inn, to wash and rest. As you are aware, we came to you before doing just that. May we continue this conversation tomorrow? Hopefully your artificers will have located the unmarked portal by then. Maebe now watched the pale light of the half-moon illuminate Mouse's skin across the carriage from her. She knew it was unfair, but she had felt angry at him for not defending her to Ahelor, and embarrassed that he had been present while she was chastised. Seeing him look so tired, though. Her oldest friend. When he was near her, her emotions tangled into a knot. Right now, she was ashamed of feeling anger. She had lost his era shard. She had asked him to go into the forest, and she had publicly shunned him. Yet, since last night, he had been more relaxed around her. Only during the long, uncomfortable wait in Ahelor's office had she understood why. "Would it be so bad to be with me?" he'd asked. "No," she had said back. She had given him hope, knowing she would refuse him again if he worked up the nerve to ask her himself. At that moment, in the ghostly light of the night, he gave her a sleepy smile. A gentle look from across the carriage, so small and so significant. Had she held his gaze, she was certain she would cry from what she had done. So she turned away from him and looked out of the window to the passing glow of the city.